My name is Victoria, and I'm 69 years old. 3 weeks ago, I was about to make the biggest mistake of my career, firing 500 employees to boost quarterly profits. Then I received a handwritten letter from a 15-year-old autistic girl that began with 5 desperate words. Can you read this? It's urgent. What she told me in that letter didn't just change my mind about the layoffs. It revealed a secret about my own company that had been hidden for decades and showed me that sometimes the most important voices come from the people we least expect to hear from. Before I share this extraordinary story with you, I want to ask you to subscribe to this channel. I tell real stories about corporate responsibility, about listening to voices that are often overlooked, and about how one person's courage can change the course of entire organizations. If you believe that business should serve people rather than just profits, please hit that subscribe button and join our community. My name is Victoria Morrison, and I'm 69 years old. I'm sitting here in my corner office on the 42nd floor of Morrison Technologies in downtown Seattle, looking out at the city where I've built one of the most successful software companies in the Pacific Northwest. The view from up here is magnificent. Elliott Bay stretching to the horizon, Mount Rainier standing majesty in the distance, the bustling streets far below where thousands of people go about their daily lives without knowing how close they came to having those lives disrupted by a decision I almost made. 3 weeks ago, I was prepared to authorize the largest layoff in my company's history. 500 employees, nearly 20% of our workforce, were going to lose their jobs so that we could meet the quarterly profit projections that Wall Street analysts had demanded. The decision was financially sound, strategically defensible, and supported by every metric that modern business considers important. I had the termination letters prepared, the severance packages calculated, the press release drafted to explain why these cuts were necessary for long-term sustainability and competitive positioning. I had scheduled the announcement for a Tuesday morning, giving HR exactly 1 week to coordinate what would be the most painful day in Morrison Technologies' 25-year history. Then, on the Monday evening before the announcement, I received a handwritten letter that would change everything. Not just about the layoffs, but about how I understood my company, my employees, and my responsibility as a leader. The letter came from Emma Rodriguez, a 15-year-old autistic girl from Portland, Oregon. It began with 5 words that would haunt me for days. Can you read this? It's urgent. What followed were 12 pages of careful, deliberate handwriting that told me a story I never could have imagined. A story about my company's impact on people I'd never met, about programs I didn't know existed, and about why those 500 jobs represented something far more important than quarterly earnings. But to understand why Emma's letter affected me so profoundly, you need to understand how I got to the point where I was willing to destroy 500 lives for the sake of financial projections, and why I thought that was not just acceptable, but necessary. I founded Morrison Technologies in 1999, fresh out of a messy divorce and determined to prove that a 50-year-old woman could build a technology company that would compete with the best in the industry. I had spent the previous 20 years climbing the corporate ladder at established tech firms, watching as company after company prioritized short-term profits over long-term vision, quarterly results over employee welfare, shareholder value over social responsibility. I was determined to do things differently. Morrison Technologies would be a company that treated employees like family, that invested in innovation rather than just cost-cutting, that measured success by the positive impact we had on the world rather than just the money we generated for investors. For the first 15 years, that idealistic vision worked beautifully. We developed software solutions for small and medium-sized businesses, creating tools that helped them operate more efficiently, serve their customers better, and grow sustainably. Our employee satisfaction ratings were consistently among the highest in the industry. Our turnover was minimal. Our workplace culture was collaborative, supportive, and genuinely innovative. We grew steadily but carefully, reinvesting profits into research and development rather than aggressive expansion. We hired the best people we could find and gave them the resources and autonomy they needed to do their best work. We offered comprehensive health benefits, generous parental leave, flexible work arrangements, and professional development opportunities that helped our employees build careers they could be proud of. But in 2014, everything changed when we went public. Suddenly, I was answerable not just to employees and customers, but to shareholders who cared primarily about quarterly results and stock performance. The patient, long-term thinking that had built Morrison Technologies was replaced by the relentless pressure for immediate returns that dominates public markets. At first, I thought I could manage the transition while maintaining our values and culture. I believed I could satisfy Wall Street's demands for growth and profitability while still treating employees well and focusing on meaningful innovation. For several years, that balancing act worked. Our stock price rose steadily, our quarterly results exceeded expectations, and our employee satisfaction remained high. We continued developing software solutions that made a genuine difference for small businesses, and our workplace culture remained largely intact despite the pressures of public ownership. But by 2020, the pressures began to intensify in ways I hadn't anticipated. Wall Street analysts were demanding more aggressive cost-cutting measures, more dramatic quarterly profit increases, more efficiency improvements that inevitably meant reducing headcount and cutting employee benefits. The pandemic made these pressures even worse. While many companies used COVID-19 as cover for massive layoffs and benefit reductions, I had tried to protect our workforce, maintaining full employment and even expanding health benefits to help employees deal with pandemic-related challenges. These decisions were morally right, but they were financially costly. Our profit margins compressed, our stock price stagnated, and analysts began questioning my leadership and suggesting that Morrison Technologies needed more disciplined management to achieve its potential. The breaking point came in early 2024 when our largest institutional investor, a hedge fund that owned nearly 15% of our stock, demanded a meeting to discuss operational efficiency improvements. The message was clear: cut costs dramatically or face a potential hostile takeover. The hedge fund's representatives presented their analysis with clinical precision. Morrison Technologies was overstaffed by industry standards, they argued. Our employee benefits were unnecessarily generous compared to competitors. Our approach to research and development was insufficiently focused on short-term revenue generation. They had identified exactly which departments could be eliminated, which positions were redundant, and which projects should be canceled to maximize quarterly profits. Their recommendations would increase our profit margins by 30% within 2 quarters, they promised, making our stock attractive to growth-oriented investors. The human cost of their recommendations was staggering. 500 employees would lose their jobs, benefits would be cut across the board for remaining staff, and research projects that had been years in development would be terminated immediately. But they presented these cuts not as human tragedies, but as optimization opportunities. They spoke about right-sizing the workforce, streamlining operations, and enhancing shareholder value. They made it sound like firing 500 people was not just financially necessary, but morally responsible to our investors. I spent weeks fighting against their recommendations, trying to find alternatives that would satisfy their profit demands without destroying lives. I explored every option I could think of: delaying expansion plans, reducing executive compensation, finding operational efficiencies that didn't require layoffs. But the mathematics were inexorable. The hedge fund controlled enough stock to influence board decisions, and they made it clear that failure to implement their recommendations would result in a proxy fight that could remove me from leadership entirely. Faced with the choice between authorizing the layoffs myself or being replaced by someone who would implement even more dramatic cuts, I reluctantly agreed to their demands. The decision felt like betraying everything I had tried to build at Morrison Technologies, but I convinced myself that protecting the jobs of 1,500 employees was more important than saving the jobs of 500. I spent the next month working with HR and legal teams to prepare for the layoffs. We identified which positions would be eliminated, calculated severance packages that exceeded industry standards, and developed communication strategies that would minimize trauma for both departing and remaining employees. It was during this period, when I was working late every night to prepare for what felt like the dismantling of my life's work, that I received Emma Rodriguez's letter. The envelope was addressed in careful handwriting to Victoria Morrison, Chief Executive Officer, Morrison Technologies. There was no corporate logo or return address, just a simple manila envelope postmarked from Portland, Oregon. Inside was a handwritten letter on lined notebook paper, accompanied by several printed articles and a small photograph. The letter began, "Dear Ms. Morrison, my name is Emma Rodriguez, and I am 15 years old. I have autism spectrum disorder, and I am writing to you about something very urgent that I think you need to know about your company. Can you read this? It's urgent because I heard that Morrison Technologies might be laying off lots of people soon, and I need to tell you why that would be a terrible mistake that could hurt thousands of people you don't even know about. Please don't throw this letter away. I know it's weird to get a handwritten letter from a teenager you've never met, but I had to write to you because what I have to tell you is too important to say in an email that might get deleted or a phone call that might not get through to you. I need you to understand that your company saved my life, and if you fire the people who saved me, you might destroy the lives of kids like me all over the country. Miss Morrison, do you know about the Morrison Technologies Foundation Community Outreach Program?" I paused in my reading, confused. Morrison Technologies had established a charitable foundation in 2010, but it was a relatively small operation that focused on providing technology equipment to underfunded schools. I was peripherally aware of its activities, but I had never heard of a community outreach program. Emma's letter continued, "Ms. Morrison, I don't think you know about all the things your company does to help people like me. I don't think you know about the program that saved my life and the lives of hundreds of other autistic kids and teenagers. Let me tell you my story so you can understand why this is so urgent. I was diagnosed with autism when I was 3 years old, but it wasn't the kind of autism that most people think about. I could talk, I could learn, I seemed high-functioning to most people. But I had severe problems with social communication, sensory processing, and executive functioning that made school and social situations incredibly difficult. By the time I was 12, I was deeply depressed and anxious. I had been bullied at school for being weird. I had no friends, and I felt like I was failing at everything that seemed to come naturally to other kids. I was having panic attacks almost daily, and I had started engaging in self-harm behaviors that scared my parents. My parents tried everything they could think of to help me. They took me to therapists, psychiatrists, social skills groups, and support programs. Some of these things helped a little, but nothing seemed to address the core problem. I felt completely alone and misunderstood in a world that seemed designed for people whose brains worked differently than mine. Then, in 7th grade, something happened that changed everything. My school's computer teacher, Mr. Johnson, told me about a new after-school program that was starting for kids who were interested in technology and programming. He said it was specifically designed for students who might be different or unconventional thinkers, and he thought I might enjoy it. The program was called Code for Connection, and it was funded entirely by the Morrison Technologies Foundation. But Ms. Morrison, this wasn't just a regular coding class. It was something much more special and important. The program was run by Morrison Technologies employees who volunteered their time to work with kids like me. But these weren't just any employees. They were adults who were autistic, ADHD, dyslexic, or had other neurodivergent conditions. They understood what it was like to be different, and they had found ways to use technology to build successful careers despite the challenges they faced. Ms. Morrison, meeting these adults changed my life in ways I can never fully explain. For the first time in my life, I met grown-ups who thought like me, who understood my struggles, who saw my differences as strengths rather than problems to be fixed. They taught me programming skills, but more importantly, they taught me that being autistic didn't mean I was broken or defective. They showed me that the same qualities that made me weird in social situations, my attention to detail, my ability to focus intensely on complex problems, my logical thinking patterns, were exactly the qualities that made me talented at programming and software development. Over the next 3 years, Code for Connection became the center of my life. I learned multiple programming languages, developed my own software projects, and most importantly, I found a community of people who understood and valued me for exactly who I am. But Ms. Morrison, the program gave me much more than technical skills. It gave me hope, confidence, and a vision of a future where I could be successful and valued despite, or maybe because of, my autism. The Morrison Technologies employees who ran the program became mentors, advocates, and role models for me. They helped me navigate high school social situations, advocated for academic accommodations that helped me succeed, and showed me career paths that would allow me to use my strengths while managing my challenges. Ms. Morrison, I am now a junior in high school with a 4.0 GPA. I have been accepted to the early admission program at Oregon State University, where I will study computer science and software engineering. I have already completed 2 software development internships, and I have job offers from 3 different technology companies for after I graduate from college. But most importantly, I am happy, confident, and excited about my future in ways that would have been impossible without Code for Connection and the Morrison Technologies employees who made it possible. Ms. Morrison, here's what I need you to understand. I am not the only one. Code for Connection has served over 800 students in the past 8 years. The program operates in 12 cities across Oregon and Washington, reaching kids who might otherwise fall through the cracks of traditional educational and social support systems. The kids in this program aren't just learning to code. They're learning that they have value, that their differences are strengths, that they can build meaningful careers and contribute to their communities in important ways. And Ms. Morrison, here's the part that I think you don't know. Code for Connection is run entirely by Morrison Technologies employees who volunteer their time, and it's funded by a special employee giving program that has been operating for 8 years without any corporate publicity or recognition. The employees who run this program don't do it because they're required to. They don't do it for recognition or career advancement. They do it because they care about kids like me, because they remember what it was like to be different and misunderstood, and because they want to use their success to help the next generation. Ms. Morrison, I heard rumors that Morrison Technologies is planning major layoffs. I heard that hundreds of employees might lose their jobs. I don't know if these rumors are true, but I had to write to you because I need you to understand what those layoffs would mean for kids like me. If you fire Morrison Technologies employees, you won't just be destroying their lives and their families' security. You'll be destroying Code for Connection and programs like it. You'll be cutting off opportunities for hundreds of neurodivergent kids who depend on this program for hope, community, and career development. Ms. Morrison, can you read this? Can you understand that firing your employees would hurt thousands of people you've never met, including kids like me who are depending on Morrison Technologies not just for technology products, but for proof that people like us can be successful and valued in the world? This is urgent because layoffs don't just affect the people who lose their jobs. They affect everyone whose lives are touched by the work those people do, including kids like me who need to believe that companies like Morrison Technologies care about more than just profits. I had to stop reading and take a break. The letter was already overwhelming me with emotions I wasn't prepared for, but Emma wasn't finished. The next several pages contained even more information that would fundamentally change how I understood my company and my responsibilities as its leader. When I resumed reading, Emma's letter continued with details about the Morrison Technologies Foundation programs that I had never fully understood or appreciated. Ms. Morrison, I need to tell you about more programs that your employees have created that you might not know about. Besides Code for Connection, there's also a program called Tech for Accessibility, where Morrison Technologies employees work with disabled adults to customize assistive technology solutions. They help people with physical disabilities, visual impairments, cognitive differences, and other conditions use technology to live more independently and work more effectively. There's a program called Digital Bridge that provides technology training and support for elderly people who are struggling to stay connected with their families and communities in an increasingly digital world. Morrison Technologies employees volunteer at senior centers, teaching older adults how to use smartphones, tablets, and computers to video call their grandchildren, manage their health information, and access online services. There's a program called Small Business Tech Support, where Morrison Technologies employees volunteer their expertise to help local small businesses implement technology solutions they couldn't otherwise afford. They help family restaurants set up online ordering systems, assist local nonprofits with database management, and provide technical support for community organizations. Ms. Morrison, these programs exist because your employees are good people who care about their community and want to use their skills to help others. But they also exist because Morrison Technologies has created a workplace culture that encourages and supports this kind of community engagement. The employees who volunteer for these programs tell me that they're able to participate because Morrison Technologies offers flexible work schedules, generous paid time off for community service, and a supportive environment that values social responsibility as much as professional achievement. Ms. Morrison, if you lay off hundreds of employees, you won't just be ending individual careers. You'll be dismantling a network of community support that touches thousands of lives throughout the Pacific Northwest. The remaining employees will be overworked and stressed, with no time or energy for community engagement. The workplace culture that encourages volunteerism and social responsibility will be destroyed by fear and insecurity. The programs that depend on Morrison Technologies employees will collapse, leaving vulnerable people without the support they depend on. But Ms. Morrison, there's something else I need to tell you that's even more important. I spent weeks researching Morrison Technologies before writing this letter, because I wanted to make sure I understood your company's history and values before asking you to change your plans. What I discovered is that Morrison Technologies has been quietly making a difference in thousands of lives for years, without publicity or recognition, simply because you built a company that attracts and supports people who care about more than just their own success. Ms. Morrison, your employees aren't just workers who happen to volunteer in their spare time. They're people who chose to work for Morrison Technologies specifically because they believed it was a company that shared their values and supported their desire to make a positive difference in the world. If you betray those values now by prioritizing profits over people, you won't just lose 500 employees. You'll lose the trust and loyalty of the 1,500 who remain. You'll lose the company culture that made Morrison Technologies special. You'll lose the social impact that has been your company's most important legacy. Ms. Morrison, I'm 15 years old, and I don't understand everything about business and economics, but I understand something that I think the adults who are pressuring you to make these layoffs might not understand. Morrison Technologies isn't just a company that makes software. It's a company that makes hope. It's a company that shows people like me that we have value and potential. It's a company that proves that business can be a force for good in the world, not just a machine for generating profits. If you destroy that to satisfy Wall Street analysts who don't understand what makes Morrison Technologies truly valuable, you'll be making a mistake that you'll regret for the rest of your life. Ms. Morrison, can you read this letter? Can you understand what I'm trying to tell you? This is urgent because once you announce those layoffs, you can't take it back. Once you break trust with your employees and destroy the programs that depend on them, you can't rebuild what you've lost. But if you decide not to make those layoffs, if you find another way to address the financial pressures you're facing, you'll be saving much more than 500 jobs. You'll be preserving thousands of lives that have been touched by Morrison Technologies' community programs. You'll be protecting a company culture that attracts the best people and inspires them to do their best work. You'll be maintaining the social impact that makes Morrison Technologies meaningful beyond just its financial results. Ms. Morrison, I'm including with this letter some materials that will help you understand the full scope of what I'm talking about. There are articles about Code for Connection and other community programs, testimonials from people who have been helped by Morrison Technologies volunteers, and research about the business benefits of maintaining strong employee engagement and community involvement. But more than that, I'm including a photograph that I hope will help you understand why this is so urgent for me personally. I looked at the photograph Emma had included. It showed a group of about 20 teenagers and several adults in what appeared to be a computer lab. The kids were diverse in age, ethnicity, and apparent ability levels. Some looked like typical teenagers. Others showed obvious signs of developmental differences. The adults were clearly Morrison Technologies employees, wearing company polo shirts and name badges. At the center of the group was a girl I recognized as Emma from her careful handwriting style, a slight, serious-looking teenager with dark hair and intense eyes. She was sitting at a computer workstation, showing code on her screen to two other students. Her expression was one of focused concentration, but also genuine happiness and confidence. On the back of the photograph, Emma had written, "Code for Connection Summer Intensive Program, July 2024. This was taken 3 weeks before I heard about the possible layoffs. These Morrison Technologies employees have given me and my classmates the skills and confidence we need to succeed in life. Please don't fire them. Emma's letter concluded, Ms. Morrison, I know this is an unusual letter from someone you've never met. I know that a 15-year-old autistic girl probably isn't the person most business leaders would listen to about corporate strategy and financial decisions. But I also know that I represent hundreds of kids whose lives have been changed by Morrison Technologies, and thousands of community members who depend on the programs your employees have created. We don't have lobbyists or lawyers or investment funds to make our voices heard in your boardroom. We don't have the power to influence stock prices or threaten hostile takeovers. All we have is our stories, our gratitude, and our hope that you'll remember why you started Morrison Technologies in the first place. Ms. Morrison, you built a company that attracts people who want to make a positive difference in the world. You created a workplace culture that encourages employees to use their skills and resources to help others. You've established a foundation that has quietly improved thousands of lives throughout the Pacific Northwest. These accomplishments are more valuable and more lasting than quarterly profit reports or stock price fluctuations. They represent the kind of legacy that most business leaders can only dream of creating. Please don't throw away that legacy to satisfy investors who don't understand what makes Morrison Technologies truly valuable. Please read this letter. Please consider what I'm asking. Please remember that your decisions affect not just your employees and shareholders, but kids like me who are counting on Morrison Technologies to prove that business can be a force for good in the world. This is urgent because I believe you have the power to choose between profits and people, between short-term financial gains and long-term social impact, between satisfying Wall Street analysts and maintaining the values that made Morrison Technologies special. I hope you'll choose people. I hope you'll choose impact. I hope you'll choose the values that have made Morrison Technologies a beacon of hope for kids like me. Thank you for reading this letter. I hope you'll contact me if you want to learn more about the programs I've described or meet some of the people whose lives have been changed by Morrison Technologies employees. I'll be checking my email every day, hoping to hear that you've decided not to make those layoffs and that Morrison Technologies will continue to be the kind of company that makes hope as well as software. With gratitude and hope, Emma Rodriguez. At the bottom of the letter, Emma had included her email address, phone number, and a note that she had permission from her parents to be contacted by me directly. I sat in my office for over an hour after finishing Emma's letter, staring out at the Seattle skyline and trying to process everything she had told me. The materials she had included provided overwhelming evidence for every claim she had made about Morrison Technologies' community impact. There were newspaper articles about Code for Connection that I had never seen, featuring stories of students who had gone on to successful careers in technology after participating in the program. There were testimonials from small business owners who had received free technical support from Morrison Technologies volunteers, describing how that assistance had helped them survive economic challenges and continue serving their communities. There were research reports documenting the economic and social benefits of corporate community engagement programs, showing that companies with strong volunteer cultures had higher employee satisfaction, lower turnover, better recruitment outcomes, and more sustainable long-term performance. Most importantly, there were internal Morrison Technologies documents that I had never seen, employee survey responses, volunteer program reports, and foundation impact assessments that revealed the full scope of community engagement activities I had never fully understood or appreciated. Emma had been absolutely correct about everything. Morrison Technologies employees had indeed created an extensive network of community programs that were touching thousands of lives throughout the Pacific Northwest. These programs were funded through employee giving and volunteer time, supported by company policies that encouraged community engagement and operated with minimal oversight or publicity. The employees who were scheduled for layoffs included many of the key volunteers who ran these programs. Eliminating their positions would indeed destroy community programs that vulnerable people depended on. But more than that, Emma's letter had reminded me of something I had lost sight of during the months of financial pressure and Wall Street demands. Morrison Technologies had become successful, not despite our commitment to social responsibility, but because of it. Our company culture attracted talented employees who were motivated by more than just salary and benefits. Our commitment to community engagement created loyalty and job satisfaction that translated into lower turnover, higher productivity, and better customer service. Our reputation for social responsibility opened business opportunities and partnerships that purely profit-focused competitors couldn't access. The hedge fund's analysis had focused exclusively on short-term cost reduction, ignoring the long-term value created by our employee engagement and community impact. They had treated our company culture as an expensive luxury rather than recognizing it as our most important competitive advantage. Emma's letter had shown me that authorizing the layoffs wouldn't just be morally wrong, it would be strategically disastrous. We would save money in the short term, but we would destroy the qualities that made Morrison Technologies special and sustainable over the long term. I spent the rest of that evening and most of the next day researching alternatives to the layoffs that the hedge fund had demanded. I analyzed our financial situation from every possible angle, explored creative solutions that might satisfy investor demands without destroying jobs, and consulted with financial advisors who understood the value of intangible assets like employee loyalty and community impact. By Wednesday morning, I had developed a comprehensive alternative plan that would achieve the cost savings investors were demanding without resorting to mass layoffs. The plan included strategic reorganization, operational efficiencies, executive compensation reductions, and delayed expansion projects that would improve our financial performance while preserving our workforce and community programs. But before presenting this plan to the board and investors, I wanted to speak with Emma directly. Her letter had provided crucial perspective on the hidden costs of the layoffs, and I wanted to thank her personally for her courage in reaching out to me. I called the number she had provided, and she answered on the second ring. Emma Rodriguez speaking. Emma, this is Victoria Morrison from Morrison Technologies. I received your letter, and I've spent the last 2 days reading everything you sent me. There was a pause, and then I heard what sounded like a sharp intake of breath. Ms. Morrison, you're calling me? You read my letter? I read every word, I confirmed. Emma, I want you to know that your letter is one of the most important pieces of communication I've ever received as a business leader. What you told me about Morrison Technologies' community impact has completely changed my understanding of what this company means to people beyond our employees and shareholders. Does that mean, she started to ask, but her voice trailed off as if she was afraid to hope. It means that there will be no layoffs at Morrison Technologies, I said. It means that you've helped me remember why I started this company in the first place, and what success really means beyond just financial metrics. The conversation that followed lasted for over an hour. Emma introduced me to several other students in Code for Connection, each of whom shared their own stories about how Morrison Technologies employees had influenced their lives and career prospects. I learned details about community programs I hadn't known existed, and I began to understand the full scope of impact that our company was having beyond our core business activities. But more than the specific information about programs and outcomes, what struck me most was the passion, intelligence, and moral clarity that Emma and her fellow students brought to our conversation. These were young people who understood something that many business leaders never grasp, that companies have responsibilities to their communities that go far beyond generating profits for shareholders. Over the next week, I worked with my senior leadership team to implement the alternative cost reduction plan I had developed. We found ways to improve efficiency and reduce expenses without eliminating jobs or destroying the company culture that made Morrison Technologies special. The response from our employees was overwhelmingly positive. When I announced that we had found alternatives to the layoffs that Wall Street analysts had demanded, productivity and morale improved dramatically. Employee survey scores reached all-time highs, and voluntary turnover dropped to the lowest levels in company history. More importantly, the community programs that Emma had written about experienced unprecedented growth and impact. When employees realized that their jobs and their volunteer activities were secure, participation in community programs increased significantly. Code for Connection expanded to 3 additional cities. The other foundation programs doubled their capacity, and new initiatives were launched to address additional community needs. The financial results exceeded everyone's expectations. Our alternative cost reduction strategies achieved the savings that investors had demanded, but without the disruption and demoralization that mass layoffs would have caused. Our improved employee engagement translated into better customer service, higher productivity, and increased innovation that drove revenue growth beyond what the hedge fund's projections had anticipated. 6 months later, our stock price had reached all-time highs. Our quarterly results were exceeding analyst expectations, and business publications were featuring Morrison Technologies as a case study in how companies could achieve financial success while maintaining social responsibility. But the most meaningful recognition came from an unexpected source. Emma Rodriguez and several other Code for Connection students were invited to speak at a technology industry conference about the importance of corporate community engagement. Their presentation, titled "Why Companies That Care Perform Better," became one of the most widely shared talks in the conference's history. In her portion of the presentation, Emma said something that I will never forget. Morrison, technologies taught me that success isn't just about what you achieve for yourself. It's about what you make possible for others. When companies understand that principle, they don't just make more money, they make more hope. If this story resonates with you, if you believe that businesses have responsibilities beyond just generating profits, please subscribe to this channel and share your own experiences in the comments. Emma's courage in writing that letter reminded me that every decision we make in business affects real people in ways we might never see or understand. Your voice matters in holding companies accountable for their impact on communities and employees. The most important lesson I learned from Emma's letter is that the people who are most affected by corporate decisions are often the ones who have the least power to influence them. But sometimes, if we're willing to listen, those voices can teach us things that all the financial analysis and strategic consulting in the world can't reveal. Emma showed me that Morrison Technologies had become successful not despite our commitment to social responsibility, but because of it. She helped me understand that the programs our employees had created were not just charitable activities, but essential investments in community relationships that made our business stronger and more sustainable. Most importantly, she reminded me that leadership isn't just about making decisions that satisfy shareholders and analysts. It's about making decisions that reflect our values and consider the full range of people who are affected by our choices. 3 weeks ago, I was about to authorize layoffs that would have saved money in the short term, but destroyed value in the long term. Thanks to a 15-year-old autistic girl who had the courage to write me a letter, I made a different choice, a choice that proved that doing the right thing is often also the smart thing. My name is Victoria Morrison. I'm 69 years old. I'm the CEO of Morrison Technologies in Seattle, Washington, and I've learned that the most important business advice I've ever received came not from consultants or investors, but from a teenager who understood something about corporate responsibility that many adults never grasp. Emma Rodriguez saw connections that I had missed, understood implications that I hadn't considered, and had the wisdom to know that sometimes the people running companies need to be reminded of the human impact of their decisions. Her letter was indeed urgent, not just because of the immediate crisis it helped me avoid, but because it reminded me that business leaders have the power to create hope or destroy it, and that power comes with responsibilities that extend far beyond quarterly earnings reports. Thank you for listening to this story. Take care of yourselves, and remember, sometimes the most important letter you'll ever receive will come from someone you've never met, someone whose life depends on you making the right choice. Someone who has the courage to tell you truths that others won't.